Hi, I'm Candace Mallet, editor of Blavity Politics, and we're here with presidential candidate Julian Castro.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. So to jump things off, something I like to ask every guest is, why you and why now?
Well, I'm running for president because I feel tremendously blessed with the opportunity that I've had in life to grow up in a single-parent household with a grandmother who had worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter, raised my mom as a single parent, go to the public schools of San Antonio, and then eventually go to college, law school, be the first in my family to be a professional and get to serve in the Obama administration, our country. I feel tremendously blessed with opportunity, and I want to make sure that that kind of opportunity is there for everybody, no matter who you are. Right now, that's especially needed because we have a president that only sees himself as the president for some people. I want to be a president where everyone counts, a president for everybody. And I've laid out a vision for how we can get there.
Good morning, Secretary Castro. My name is Kadeem Pilgrim from Brooklyn, New York. So we're all well aware of the fact that the first 100 days for any new president can be very difficult. Should you be elected, what are the top 3 things you'd like to accomplish?
And we've been asked this question, of course, on the campaign trail. There's so much that we're going to have to do to repair the damage that this president has done. But let me focus on 3 things that I see as very, very essential. Number 1, getting back into the Paris Climate Accord and then leading again on sustainability so that we do what we can to combat climate change. Secondly, legislation to revamp our healthcare system so that everybody in this country is able to get the care that they need. Not only have insurance, or not have insurance, but actually get health care in this country. That touches every single person, and that's essential. And third, we need to take the opportunity to reform an immigration system that is just not working, that is broken. And in fact, in the last couple of years, has been used by this president, Donald Trump, for cruelty. So those are 3 things that would be right at the top of my agenda. The truth is, though, that my experience having served President Obama and his cabinet will, I believe, be very helpful because aside from legislation, what we need to do is we need a catalog of all of those rules and regulations that this president and his administration have undone from the Obama era and sometimes made worse. Yeah. I want a catalog on my desk as soon as I become president of all of those things. And I will issue an order to each of the acting secretaries of those departments on the first day to immediately begin the process of taking us back to where we were, at least in the Obama administration, whether it means protecting the LGBTQ community again from discrimination in housing or in the military, undoing the Muslim travel ban, undoing that Remain in Mexico program, re-implementing environmental protections that have been lost during this presidency. Some of the most important work won't only be the work that we do in Congress, but the work that we're going to have to do as an administration to get going immediately to undo the damage.
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm from Los Angeles. I know you've spoken before about reproductive rights for the trans community, and I wanted to know what steps would you take to help trans men and non-binary people who are assigned female at birth to gain access to abortion?
I would do what I can with Health and Human Services, our department, to implement rules that help to ensure that there is not discrimination that happens in our healthcare system, because I believe that too often times trans individuals face that kind of discrimination. And when I was housing secretary, for instance, one of the things I'm proud of is that we implemented a transgender rule so that if somebody's transgender and they go to a publicly funded shelter, they have to be accommodated according to their preference, how they feel comfortable. Well, we need to do the same thing to make sure that if people want access to reproductive care or to abortion, that they're able to get that. I also believe that we need to pass legislation like the Equality Act to ensure that the LGBTQ community, which would include, of course, transgender individuals, cannot be discriminated against, whether it's in seeking a job, seeking health care, seeking housing, or any other way. And I would forward that legislation to Congress as a priority to try and make sure that no matter who you are, if you want to get an abortion, you can do that.
Hello, Secretary Castro.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Jove Coleman from Canton, Ohio. So as we all know, unfortunately, private prisons right now are overpopulated with African Americans. I know a lot of other candidates have released their proposal of how to abolish private prisons. So if you are elected, what are some of your plans to eliminate private prisons?
Yeah, I've called for the elimination of private prisons. In the overall criminal justice system, and also in the immigration context, as you know, these private detention centers that are making a profit off of holding young minors, I don't think that anybody should have a profit motive for putting more people behind bars. And so, as I see it, we need to phase that out. Now, of course, realistically, that's going to take time because, you have folks that are housed in these private facilities. There are contracts that are in place, and what we need is less people incarcerated in the first place. We shouldn't need these prisons in the first place. We're here in California today, and I keep hearing the statistic that over a 20 or 25-year period, California built 22 prisons and 1 state university. I think we need to reverse that or turn that on its head. So, yes, I support getting rid of private prisons. As soon as I become president, we would draw up a plan on how to do that. But ultimately, as I said in my criminal justice reform plan, I want to give people a first chance in the first place so that they never end up behind bars at all.
Hey, how's it going, Secretary Castro? My name is Sid. I'm originally from New York. Now I'm a resident of LA. I know police brutality is something that's really impacted our community greatly. And I know you've made it a point to mention the names of those like Tatiana Jefferson and other folks who've been greatly impacted by and killed by police brutality. So I'm very curious to know, if elected as president, what you plan to do about that.
Yeah, I've grown up thinking how infuriating it is that especially people of color, and particularly young black men and women, are treated with excessive force at much greater rates than whites. And that we see the evidence of that all the time. And fortunately, now we have video evidence of that. We see video after video after video where that happens. And I've laid out a plan for how we can ensure that we drive down the rate of excessive force by police. It includes several things. Number one, I would implement a national use of force standard that says if you're a police department out there, you need to have a policy in place that your officer can only use lethal force if that person's life is directly threatened or somebody that they're trying to protect is directly, immediately threatened, and all other reasonable alternatives have been exhausted. If they don't adopt that standard, then the Department of Justice would withhold funding if somebody is injured or killed and they didn't adopt that standard. So we would use, the weight of the federal government and the funding of the federal government as a way to hold these police departments accountable. On top of that, I would work with Congress to ban stop and frisk, which, as you know, in places like New York, traditionally was overused in communities of color, basically to harass people, to keep them in their place too often times. I would also work to ban racial profiling, which still happens all the time. My plan also calls for better recruiting of a diverse core of people into the police force, because I want people who grew up in those neighborhoods that are too often over-policed. You have a lot of police officers, and we have a lot of police officers that I believe are good individuals. They're trying to do a good job, but I also think the system itself is out of order. The system itself is messed up.
And so, here at Blavity Politics, we make it a point to cover immigration issues, specifically from the lens of Black immigrants. So when it comes to your immigration plan, how are you going to make sure that, Black immigrants are not forgotten? Because often that happens.
No, y'all bring up a great point. And, oftentimes when people think about immigration, they think of brown-skinned people. And so the immigration plan that I've put forward actually addresses the situation that a lot of different immigrants are in. Not only people that are trying to come across the border, but also people who have been here for a long time, people who have overstayed a visa, to make sure that people can get on a pathway to citizenship. Also, that they have the opportunity to stay here without fear of being deported and continue to provide for their families and the ability to work. I also believe that we need to recognize the contribution that refugees from around the world, including refugees from African nations, have made to a whole bunch of communities. So my immigration plan has tried to look beyond these usual sort of boundaries that we have in our mind, out there, or a lot of people do, about immigration, and tries to address the situation that people find themselves in, and also recognizes that you have, people with brown skin, people with black skin, people with white skin that are caught up in this broken immigration system.
Hi, Secretary Castro. Jove Coleman from Canton, Ohio again. So I know that a lot of other candidates have brought up their opinions or plans regarding reparations. I'm very curious as far as what your stance is on that.
I believe that there is a moral debt that the United States owes to the families of people who were enslaved, and that we should offer reparations. I said very early in this campaign that I believe in that. And the way that I see it is that we do owe a moral debt. And also, under our Constitution, if the government takes your property, that's considered a taking and they owe compensation. So why wouldn't we compensate people who were actively sanctioned as property by the state, or in this case, their descendants? I believe that we should. Now, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has proposed the steps that we would take in order to make that real. Right? She's proposed a commission that would be formed that would make a recommendation to the president, to the Congress and the president. And I support that legislation. People have different views of what that would look like. But ultimately, I believe that it would be some sort of direct acknowledgement and apology from the nation for what happened, and also some form of compensation to the descendants of those who were enslaved.
Secretary Castro, you are the only Latino candidate running in the 2020 presidential race, which is a huge accomplishment. So how do you plan on using your rich cultural background as a Latino to set yourself apart from the other candidates? Moreover, how are you going to use your background to address the racial divide that over the last 3 years has just been exacerbated by the president who's currently in office?
Yeah, what I've tried to bring to the campaign is just, a vision for the future of the country that is based on, in part, of course, on my own experience, and understanding that no matter where we come from, no matter our cultural background, no matter what language we speak, right? Because I grew up around a lot of people where their first language was Spanish, that we have the same brains and the same talent, the same ability. That's such a different view from this president, because this president seems to think that unless you look like him, you really don't have much value for the future of this country. I'm proud of my background, and I hope when I'm on that debate stage that there are little Latinas and little Latinos that are looking up and saying, hey, I can do that too. At the same time, what distinguishes me from this president, one of the things, is that I'm not here just to represent one group. I want to be a president for everybody. And I wish this president wanted to be a president for everybody. And what I hear out there is I hear in black and brown communities, anxiety that I haven't heard before in my lifetime. I'm sure for people that are older than me, they know a lot more struggle and they know a lot more pain. But you can feel that this administration is trying to take us backward. We don't want to go backward. We're not going to go backward. So I'm going to do what I can to articulate a strong, positive vision for the future. Also, hopefully, to inspire the Latino community. And it's no secret that Latinos turn out at a much lower rate than the black community or the white community. We need to change that. And I hope that I can be a part of changing that. Well, thank you all very much for having me, and thank you for the wonderful questions. In this campaign, I've been speaking a lot of truths that I think need to be spoken, and I've been speaking up for some of the most vulnerable Americans, saying that if we're going to move forward as a country, we need to move forward together. We need a nation where everyone counts. And I haven't been afraid to speak up against police brutality, and not only speak up, but put forward a plan on how we can change it, make sure it doesn't happen in our country. I haven't been afraid to speak up on immigration reform. Even when some folks said, hey, if you do that, they're going to think you're just the brown guy doing brown things. I said, no, we're going to put forward our own compelling, strong vision of the future of this country for everybody. And I've also spoken up about an America where we don't forget about the poor. Because as Democrats, we've talked a lot and we've worked hard, as we should, for the middle class for a long time. But somewhere along the way, we've forgotten to talk about, to address the needs of people who are poor in this country. I haven't forgotten that. And during this campaign, no matter what happens, I'm going to keep speaking out for the people who need a voice and keep fighting for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.